Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing quite a different video. I realized in one of the other vlogs I did, the Mum and Arthur day one, if you haven't seen it, go and check it out, it's really beautiful. But I mentioned that I had a hysterectomy. I'm only 28 years old. It's not very common for a 28-year-old to have a hysterectomy, especially an emergency hysterectomy. So I thought I would come on here and honestly just tell you about my journey. This is also very much the reason I started a YouTube channel. It was the next chapter of my life. So because this video is going to be a bit different and very much my story, grab a cuppa, come sit down, let's chill, pop it on the background while you're doing your day-to-day. It's going to be just, yeah, a bit of a different one. So in my family, it was very common to have terrible periods. They were always very heavy, they were always very painful, and I grew up thinking that that was the norm, and it was like that on both sides of my family. It wasn't just one or the other, it was both. So I grew up thinking that was normal, and it wasn't until I was in high school, and probably quite late in high school. I think I very much remember having this thought when I was in year 10, so I would have been 16. When my other friends got their periods, they weren't bedbound or going through a number of super pads, or they could wear a tampon, whereas I couldn't because my flow was too heavy, and it also caused me immense pain using a tampon. I was just like, oh well, they're just not for me, or I'm not doing them right. Didn't think too much of it. But then when I hit around 16, 17, I really thought, no, this isn't normal. None of my friends have, like, they would have pain, but not pain that would then cause me to be sent home, or that would cause me to pass out, or to take, honestly, an unhealthy number of painkillers to try and just get rid of some of the pain. So I turned 18 and I went and I saw a gynecologist, and that was after going through 6 doctors telling me that my symptoms were normal, that what I was feeling was just period pain, and actually got to the point where the 6th doctor that I went to said that I don't have a valid reason to go and see a gynecologist because pain is normal. And I described my pain in detail, and he said that it was still normal. Then I lied, and then it turned out to not be a lie, because it started happening after this, that I would bleed after having sex. So, wow, this is a detailed video. So I had to lie to this doctor for him to then go, see, that is a valid reason for you to see a gynecologist. I will write you a referral now. So got a referral by having to lie to a doctor because my reasons weren't good enough, and went to the gynecologist, and she said that it is possible that I have what is called endometriosis, but the only way to see that is to have exploratory surgery. So long story short, I did do that. I won't go into the details of like what endometriosis is or anything like that, because there's heaps of information out there about that kind of stuff. I just am going to focus this video on my journey with it. So I had the exploratory surgery. Sure enough, I had endometriosis. Fast forward a month later, that first period post-surgery, I was like, this is amazing. My blood looks healthy. I don't have pain. I'm feeling great. I have energy. This is incredible. And then each period I got after that, it got worse and worse and worse until it was worse than before my first surgery. So I then proceeded to have a surgery every 2 years, and it would come back more severe, and it was a lot worse. The symptoms were a lot worse. I ended up pretty much bedbound for 8 months. I couldn't move. I had no energy. I'm in my early 20s and my friends are out, you know, I was very much surrounded by musicians at that point, and they were out gigging or going to gigs. And if I went to a gig, I remember going to one, and my partner at the time actually had to hold me up during a set because I was either going to pass out. I just physically couldn't stand for that long. And it really got to me mentally. Not only the physical aspects, but mentally, here I am, this girl in her early 20s, and I wasn't able to go into normal life. I was stuck in bed or at home in immense pain that I should not be having. So I went through the public system this time, and I was on the wait list, and I was seeing gynecologists there, and we were doing hormone therapies. I tried all the pills, everything you can think of, and all it did was either made me in even more pain, and or I was bleeding every day quite heavily for, I think it actually ended up being around 5 months. Yeah. And I was saying, like, these hormone treatments are not working. Like, very much it actually got to the point where the clinic that I was said, look, we can't help you, we'll do the surgery and then we'll see what that does, and hopefully that clears it up this time around. Spoiler alert, it didn't. So while I was having all these hormone treatments and stuff like that, I think I was 21 at this point. I think I was 22 when I had that surgery, but before I did, I ended up having a conversation and being like, you know, I know I'm only 21, and I was definitely not thinking about having kids at this point. Ignore the dishwasher in the background. I was not thinking about having kids at that point, but I said, is it possible for me to have children? Because I very much wanted to have children. And I was told that it would be hard, if not impossible. And during my 3rd surgery, I was told that it's becoming more unlikely that I will be able to have children, because my endo at my 3rd surgery had actually gone on to 90% of my uterus. Doug's just walking past. It had gone on to 90% of my uterus and had also moved onto my bowel as well. I was told that having children would be difficult, if not impossible. Had my 2nd surgery. The first period after that, I actually opted to have the Mirena put in because that was my last thing that I could do. The first week I felt quite good, like first week post-surgery, and then I've spiraled very quickly. I ended up in emergency at that same hospital, and my body was pushing the Mirena out. It didn't work. It didn't work for me. I started bleeding, I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand up straight. It was a whole ordeal. But pretty much anything Western medicine didn't help me. So then I opted to go to naturopaths and dietitians and acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and I did all that, and that was probably the thing that helped me the most at that point, but it definitely didn't fix it. I definitely didn't get a break from my symptoms. It all just got worse. It got a lot worse. I opted for a 3rd surgery, so my pattern was every 2 years I would have surgery, and that, like as I said before, the 3rd surgery, it had covered 90% of my uterus. During my 2nd surgery, I was diagnosed with PCOS, so polycystic ovary syndrome. I would then deal with cysts bursting and being rushed to hospital for that. The liquid from the cysts would actually drain into my pelvis, so I would have like really intense pelvic pain as well. So during my 3rd surgery, they said it covered 90% of my uterus. The cysts were there. They got rid of some, but some had gotten rid of themselves, and they had found it on my bowel, so they had to remove it off my bowel. And they also found a growth on my bowel that was, I think they said about 10 centimeters, 8 to 10 centimeters long. So then a few weeks later, I had bowel surgery to remove this growth. So it's 4 surgeries in a very short amount of time, which left a lot of scar tissue, which also made my chances of having children even harder. So safe to say my mental health was not in a great spot. I at that point was trying to be a musician and gig and do those kinds of things, even just go out and have a life, and for a lack of a better term, I would be knocked on my ass more than I wasn't. So during COVID, the first lockdown where we were locked down for months, I barely remember that because I was pretty much bedbound the whole time waiting for my surgery date. I was vomiting at that point. I was in immense pain daily, couldn't move. I had to have friends come over to cook me dinner, do my grocery shopping, put my groceries away, help me out of bed, to rush me to hospital if that's what I needed, to just helped me with my day-to-day life, and that was crippling in a lot of ways, not only physically but mentally. Here again, I'm in my early 20s and I can't go grocery shopping, I can't cook myself dinner, I can't dress myself on days, I can't get out of bed other days, I have to be watched in the shower just in case I pass out. My showering was literally just sitting on the ground because I could not stand for that amount of time. It was intense. I never talked about it to many people because I didn't want people to think I was making this stuff up, or it wasn't a big deal, or that I was overreacting. And I had felt like I was overreacting a lot until it got worse. It took a lot to really accept how bad it was, and to know that it wasn't okay, but it was okay to go, holy shit, this is bad. This is a bad situation, this is intense, my symptoms are intense. And it's obviously hard. You're getting told by doctors that, you know, your pain isn't that bad, or, you know, it's all in your head or whatever. And then every single time they did tests, it was like, oh no, you are actually correct. So it was a big learning curve for me, especially in my early 20s, to learn to trust my instincts when it came to my health, no matter what anyone said, whether they were professional or friends or family or whatever. Trusting my gut when it came to my health was a big thing. Anyway, so I had my third surgery, then had the bowel surgery. I was single at that point, and I met Doug. So yes, then I met Doug. I went so far as to say to him before we got together, look, my endo and PCOS are really bad. I don't know if I will be able to have children. I am unable to hold down a job because I am sick all the time. I didn't actually touch on that in terms of trying to have a career or a job to pay bills or anything like that. Was ridiculously hard. I had a really high work ethic, but I physically couldn't keep up with it, to the point that in one particular workplace I had passed out underneath the desk and bled on the floor. I could only get casual work because I wasn't the most reliable, because I would have to call in sick, or I wouldn't call in sick and I would rock up and they would be like, how the hell how did you drive here? Like, you need to go home. And to each of their credit, all my employees were really lovely and really understanding, but there was just nothing that they could do, and there was nothing that I could do. And then being bedbound for a good chunk, like months and months, like, you can't maintain a job like that. So there was a lot of shame that came with that. So yes, I met Doug, and I very much said to him that my endo and PCOS, unfortunately, are a part of me, and it comes with its own challenges. I very much want children. I knew Doug very much wanted children, but there was a possibility of that not happening. So for clarification, Doug and I had known each other for 6 years before we got together. So when I say that 2 weeks in, we decided to actively start trying to have children because we didn't know if it was possible or how long it would take. We started trying. We knew it was right. We knew we were right. So we started trying for children 2 weeks into our relationship. Oh, wow, that's just really funny. And then by some miracle, we naturally fell pregnant, and I just couldn't believe it. As soon as we conceived, I was like, we've conceived, and we've conceived a little girl. And I was so excited, and I remember telling family like really early on, because I was just like, it fucking happened. Like, I'm pregnant. I didn't think it was possible. Like, I am pregnant. And I'll never forget that feeling and that moment. And then unfortunately, 4 weeks later, I woke up with severe pain, and I was bleeding, and I was in and out of consciousness and rushed to hospital, and we miscarried, which isn't talked about a lot. I was really surprised about the people who reached out and had told me that they had miscarried, and it was like this, I felt very held by the women who surrounded me who had experienced that too. But I was also very aware of how not talked about, it is. So there was a lot of grieving there of, well, crap, am I actually going back to that headspace of, am I even going to be able to carry a child full term? You know, I didn't think I could fall pregnant. Now it was a whole nother fear of, what if I can fall pregnant, but what if I can't carry long term? So what if I always get that hope, that excitement to be crushed? Having a miscarriage was really hard. It did bring me closer to a lot of people in my life. It also brought Doug and I closer. It also made us realize how much more we wanted it. And I also knew, and this is going to sound very woohoo or crazy, I knew that I wasn't going to carry her long term. And I also knew her purpose was to pave the way for her brother, so for Arthur. We were informed at the hospital that your uterus and everything like that is very clean after a miscarriage. I don't know how to word this without it sounding really harsh, but pretty much having a miscarriage can give you a better chance of falling pregnant the following cycle, in the following month. So Doug and I came to the decision to actively try once more that next month, and then if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So we fell pregnant, and again, after we conceived, I said, we are pregnant with a boy. And he was like, okay. And that was very much his response the first time around, was just like, she's not crazy. If anyone's gonna know, it's gonna be her. And he's like, all right, let's do this. We did fall pregnant, and we fell pregnant with Arthur. So yes, carried full term, had him. It was wonderful. Oh my God, it was hard. So when we found out we were pregnant, I very much wanted to tell people, but we opted to tell like our more like close family and close circle of friends versus everyone. And we waited until we waited until 14 weeks to announce it. We didn't do a gender reveal or anything like that because I knew we were having a boy, so we just confirmed it. Yeah, I just knew we were having a boy. I had fear throughout my whole pregnancy of miscarrying, of course. I definitely had moments of grief during my pregnancy with Arthur of not being able to carry my daughter. But I was also able to kind of feel both at the same time and still very much appreciate 100% my pregnancy with Arthur. Don't get me wrong, my pregnancy was really, really rough. I was diagnosed with HG, so the extreme morning sickness. I'm not even going to attempt to say what HG stands for. So I was bedbound for the first 14 weeks. I lost weight, I was throwing up. Oh my God. I stopped counting over 9 times a day, and they were hefty bombs. That took a toll on my mental health, but there was also very much a light at the end of the tunnel. We got a doula, Tess. She was an absolute godsend, and she's the most beautiful soul you'll ever meet. And she herself experienced HG, and so she just got it on a whole nother level. Oh, the best thing we ever did was get a doula and to get Tess. That was the best decision we ever made. We got pregnant, we were excited, we went through that process. I went into labor on my due date, and Arthur was born at 2:58 a.m. the next morning. I don't normally say this unless people ask, but I'm also very proud of it. But I do want to just have like a disclaimer. It doesn't mean it takes away from your birth experience or anyone's birth experience that didn't pan out or didn't go as planned, things like that. Again, this is just my story, and something that I am proud of within myself was that I had an all-natural birth. And especially in hindsight, now that I've had a hysterectomy, I am really grateful that I got to experience the plethora of what a natural birth offered. I've never felt the extremes of what my body could do, and I appreciate my body a lot more. During my pregnancy, I still had endo pain. There was like all these talks of, you know, pregnancy can reset your system and potentially, you know, not have endo post-birth, and some people say it's a myth, some people are, so take that with a grain of salt. That obviously wasn't my case. I definitely had 1 or 2 cyst bursts whilst I was pregnant, so my anxiety went through the roof in terms of, am I miscarrying? This feels like a cyst burst. And unfortunately I have had a number of cysts burst that I knew that pain, so I was able to kind of calm myself down, call the hospital or if I needed to. So my endo pain was very much still there, and then so was my PCOS pain, so my pregnancy had another level of pain on top of it, I guess. Again, my experience. So there was a point where I was seeing an osteo and a chiro 2 to 3 times a week, because if I didn't, wow, it was not okay. So Arthur was born. It was wonderful and painful and incredible all at once. I got my first period post-birth, I think it was around 5 weeks. Doug thinks week 6 as well, so week 6, we'll say week 6. I got it quite early on. It wasn't too bad compared to like the endo pain, and I was still recovering from birth. And every month was just a whole nother level of bad. I had a newborn and a child. Doug had gone back to work at this point, and my health started declining rapidly. I was crook. I was in and out of consciousness. I had these seizure-like events that would last a long time. I had known someone else who had really bad endo and PCOS who started having like these seizure-like things. I have no idea honestly what they were even now, but they went from the day I got my period to throughout my period to the week before my period and the week of my period to it could happen at any time. I have a child to look after. I would set up a pillow and blanket on the floor and have some nappies, some wipes, so that I could just change him right there. I could play with him right there. I had his toys, I had his books, I had everything. So I didn't have to get up off the floor with Arthur unless I got up to make him a bottle. I ended up having a roster of people, especially Doug, messaging, calling throughout the day just to make sure I was okay. Arthur's awake from his nap and Doug's making him a bottle, so just watching them in the background. It got to the point that it was like, this is not okay, this is not safe. And I got a referral to quite a highly regarded gynecologist here where I live in Ballarat, and told him my story, and we proceeded to go through the talks of, do we do another endo surgery and then try to conceive straight away. At this point, how old was Arthur? He was only like,
not even 6 months.
Yeah, and having to potentially rush into having another child. We had no idea if the endo surgery, like another surgery, would work for us to try and conceive. Oh, buddy. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yes, so we pretty much had to consider, do we have another endo surgery and try and conceive with a baby who wasn't even 6 months old? And we had no idea if we would get pregnant that quickly, if it would be years of trying to conceive. We had no idea what that would look like, but we were very aware that my health was getting significantly worse. We went home and we had a huge discussion of if we have only one child. And then my health declined again, and we opted for a hysterectomy. And did he suggest a hysterectomy? He was pretty much like, I'm not going to say no.
Pat was really quite good in, you took the reins in your own health. He was very aware that we knew what our options were, and was happy to work with us on that. If you knew what you wanted, being a hysterectomy, then he would support that.
especially because I had had so many surgeries and I couldn't keep having a surgery every 2 years, or God knows if I was going to have surgeries more. My symptoms had gone to a whole nother level of these seizure-like things, plus trying to be a stay-at-home mum and look after a newborn. I ended up coming to the conclusion within myself that I have a responsibility to the child I have now, and I want to be at my absolute best for him. And if that meant only having him, then that's what we would do.
You played your best move at the time you had.
Yeah. Anyway, so we booked in the hysterectomy. My symptoms got worse. We moved up the hysterectomy, and I was in within weeks because I started having those seizure-like things daily. And so we were like, nah. And even Pat was like, oh no, we're doing this now. And so we did. Yeah, had the hysterectomy. It was really hard not being able to pick up my son for 4 weeks, 2 weeks.
Might have even been it was first 2 weeks, but then it was nothing heavier than him after that.
Yeah, but I've never felt more amazing in my life. And he was very clear that, you know, this could be just the big step in having a healthy life. Like, I might need to come back and, you know, it might not get rid of my complete pelvic pain, and it hasn't. But compared to the pain I was in, this is so much more manageable than what I was like. I have energy to get up and tidy the house, or even clean the house and play with my son all day. Whereas before that, I was lying on the floor the whole day waiting for Doug to come home. It was so bad. After the labs came back from testing my uterus, that even if they had removed all the endo, that wasn't going to stop my pain, because the labs came back that I had a condition that my actual uterus was causing the severe pain on top of my endo pain. I can't remember what that was called though. I know it started with A.
I just remember him saying that it was pretty munted. Yeah. Or at least it had said that.
Yeah.
It itself was. It wasn't just like growing elsewhere. It was like the uterus itself.
Yeah. It was another thing that reassured me that we had made the right decision, and also the prospect of having more children, knowing that in my mind was even more unlikely then. Yeah. I had my emergency hysterectomy 8 months after my son was born. And here I am, finally filming a YouTube video that I had started and stopped a number of times because I was so sick and my mental health wasn't great because I was so sick and everything else. So then after having the hysterectomy, it felt like doing this was the right time. But I also couldn't not honor the journey that had brought me here and not share that, because that is very much a big part of who I am. Do I hate the fact that I had endo and PCOS? Even during like the really rough times, there was part of me that didn't, because it had shaped me in who I am. It taught me a lot about my own gut feelings, my own health, my own self, what I am capable of, it shaped me in a lot of ways, and not all negative, like some very, very positive ways. I definitely went through a phase of hating the fact that I had endo and PCOS, and don't get me wrong, like, it sucks and I do not wish it on anybody, but I'm someone who very much tries to take the positives out of the situation I was in, and it taught me a lot of great things. Hi! What you doing?
Have you got milk on your face? What are your questions, my dear?
How do you feel seeing me experiencing my endo?
I had no expectations as to what your endo was like. I was very curious of you when, you know, I remember like very early days being on a FaceTime with you and you hobbling around the house. You're like, oh, I gotta go get my stuff out of the oven. And you were just like...
Yeah.
And I'm just like asking questions about it, and you're like, oh no, this is normal, this is fine. This is fine. It was not fine.
No, it wasn't. But unfortunately, that was my normal. So I've been dealing with this for years.
Fair enough. Yeah, and then obviously after pregnancy, I mean, like prior to that was, I guess we got used to it and we managed it as best we could. A lot of like hip squeezes and like back presses.
Yeah. any sort of release.
And then after pregnancy, obviously, like the first little while it seemed okay. It wasn't going to flare up again. And then it obviously ramped up pretty fiercely to the point that you were having seizures. I mean, that was a little bit terrifying. That was a terrifying experience. Tum 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 tum. Tum 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 tum. Tum 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 tum. For me, I just kind of tried to consider the reality of it. That, okay, my partner's either going to die, or and I'm going to be a single dad, or we're going to have to get a hysterectomy, because that was something that we had spoken about previously. And then obviously just spent the next few months just kind of sitting with that, of like, how would I feel about, like, this is our only child? How do I feel with the idea that I was only going to have one child?
Just for the context, Doug wanted 4 or more. Like, Doug wanted a lot of children. I was happy with 2 or 4. We wanted kids.
Frankly, I had already come to, not the conclusion, but peace with it prior to even having the conversation with you. I'd already assessed that to its completeness.
And don't get me wrong in that, like, we grieved, and like it still hits us now. Like, I can't speak for Doug, but personally, like, it still hits me, and I still have moments of grief when it comes to not being able to have more children, or the fact that we lost a child. Like, I still definitely have moments of grieving that, and I don't know if that'll ever really go away. It's just, you know, you feel it.
Grief is grief, and grief is not to be avoided. And it just is what it is. It's the same of, like, you inevitably know you're going to be sad at some points, or happy, angry, etc. Like, you're inevitably going to face loss in your life, and that's okay. Inability to deal with that would have taken away to the things that we do have, i.e. this guy. I guess circling back to okay, we're only having one kid. Like, I guess that was relatively easier for me to do, considering, like, my own father went through a similar experience. I'm his only child, more or less the same reasons. Mum needed surgery because of health reasons, not long after I was born. And same thing, Dad wanted like 83 kids as well. But I didn't talk to him about it at the time, but we did talk about it later. He just made reference to, like, there's a lot of similarities. Obviously, when we told them we were having surgery and that's what we were doing, they were like, oh shit, there you go.
Did you want to talk to the miscarriage at all, or you don't have to?
I mean, like, I guess I really did with the grief. Like, it is just another part of my own grief. Like, that was tragic. Like, I remember telling the family, and then the next day having to tell them that we weren't. That was full on, and I had a number of feelings show up in that, but they are what they are, and they were what they were.
How did you go with my pregnancy? And
your farts were terrible. They were atrocious. Here of, like, protein farts and, you know, keto farts. Nothing is comparable to pregnancy farts. They were shocking. Especially, like, the bigger you got, like, the more sensitive you would be to, like, rolling over in bed and something squeaking out.
Mom, yeah.
You look good pregnant.
Oh, thank you.
You look, I really liked you pregnant. And you were very much in flow a lot of the time. You were very...
It was hard to be. Like, I was in pain. I did my best.
You did pretty well.
Thank you. And birth?
Birth was an experience. That was a beautiful experience. I sometimes often think of birth, and I think of how beautiful it was. Not mine, Arthur's. I don't remember mine. No, you went into labour at like 6:20 or something like that.
5:45.
5:45, there we go. And I was just chilling at home. I was on work holidays. I was varnishing a table, actually.
Which is the labour table, which all my crystals are on. I will never sell that.
Fair enough. It's like we had a couple of early moments where it's just like, ooh, is this it? Wasn't it? As soon as you hit this, you're like, oh no, this
is it.
Yep, we're giving birth. It's happening. And then, yeah, your labour ramped up pretty quickly.
5 hours in, I was like, oh, I've got this. This is fine. Like, I deal with endo pain. This is great.
It was 3 hours in.
That was in the shower.
Yep, so, like, it was ramping up pretty casually, no worries. It was all good, well paced. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we need to start getting things organised. Plus then we also ran out of hot water. So we had no hot water.
All I wanted to be was in the shower.
Yeah, so we had to keep alternating between that and your TENS machine, which kept running out of power.
Yeah.
Oh.
That was a lot. And then by the time we got to the hospital, I was like, I cannot walk. I cannot sit.
Yeah.
And then our doula, like, Tess got there just in time with us in the hospital. It was,
yeah, we wanted to put you in the bath of the hospital and that, but we...
It was too late.
Yeah.
I was too late.
After. Excuse me. Come here. And then we did a really good job. Like, you went through a bit of a crisis moment.
The 9 centimeter moment was just like, this, give me something. And it took me an hour to cotton on that. Doug was like, no, we'll just give it one more, we'll talk about it after this surge. We didn't call them contractions. I very much was like, I want to do natural labor, and we had popped in place, like if I'm asking for epidurals and stuff, delay it. So Doug was following our birth plan, and then I was like, no, I'm in immense pain. And then we were considering having a different pain medication.
Something they put in the drip, I can't remember what it was.
But then we had an examination and I was 9 centimeters, and I was like, I'm literally there. Like, don't worry about it.
That's not the truth of it at all.
What? Oh, that's what I remembered.
No. You were begging for it, and then they pulled me aside quietly, and they're just like, look, she's 9 centimeters. She's pretty much there. Do you think we could just like keep her going for a little bit?
Yeah.
There's no point giving it to her.
Yeah.
I don't know at what point, like, you never conversed with me about like,
I couldn't speak. So.
Yeah, you must have come to that own conclusion on your own, but yeah, we did not communicate to you that you were at 9 centimeters and that you were nearly there. We're not going to give it to you.
I was told I was 9 centimeters.
Oh.
Yeah, and I
but
was
you
like,
weren't.
oh,
You definitely weren't told you weren't getting drugs because of it.
No, I did not get told that.
No.
But then yeah, I pushed for 3 hours.
Something like that.
And then my water broke, and I remember just being like, oh, that relief is like something I've never felt. And then I thought, oh, that poor midwife that is squeezing my hips right now. And then I hear our doula Tess go, Doug, are you okay? And I'm like, that was not a midwife, that was Doug. And the water splashed and like hit you when you were covered in it.
Still have those work pants.
And then little man was born.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing him now, he didn't come out crying, so everyone was a bit concerned. But knowing him, he doesn't cry unless there's a reason. And I took one look at Arthur and I was like, I have birthed Doug.
Oh yeah,
There
spitting
was
image of me when I was born.
No me in him at all. And then the older he got, the more of a mix he got. Like, you got your mother's eyes, didn't you? And your mother's nose. But then you look at him and some people are just like, no, he just looks like Doug. Now I just think he looks like him.
He just looks like Arthur, yeah.
Yeah. And now we are here. The energy change is huge. I could not believe that this is what normal energy feels like.
You were very high functioning as a cripple.
But the energy is ridiculous. I cannot believe this is what normal energy feels like. Which is why I think I'm doing quite well with being a stay-at-home mum and doing these YouTube videos, because I just have all this energy. So I think that's naturally come to its own conclusion. I hope it wasn't too rambly and I hope it made sense. But if you've got any questions, feel free to message me or comment below. I'm more than happy to answer questions. I hope this makes people with endo, if you are watching, not feel quite as alone, because I can understand how it can make you feel very isolated and alone. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have gotten to the end of this video, I really appreciate it. And thank you for listening to my journey, which then turned into our journey and our little miracle right here. Thank you so much, and see you next week for another video. Do you want to say bye? Say bye.
Bye. High five? Yeah!
Mom, high five? Yeah!